This is a video about solving a quadratic equation by taking the square root, or lots of times this is referred to as the square root method. When you're using this type of solving, the first thing you want to do is to get the equation into the form something squared equals to something. What I've written down here is a squared equals to b. So we'll do that first. In number one, the expression that's being squared is this x minus 5 squared. We want to get it by itself on one side of the equation. So to do that, we subtract 11 from both sides. X minus 5 squared equals to negative 11. And then once we've done that, we are ready to take the square root of both sides, which is step 2. Take the square root of both sides. So the square root of something squared is simply that something. So the square root of x minus 5 squared will be x minus 5 equals to plus or minus the square root of negative 11. Now I want to look at the square root of negative 11. When you have a negative under a square root sign, that's where imaginary numbers come from. You want to think of this as the square root of negative 1 times 11. This square root of negative 1 is defined to be I. So we're going to take this out. It becomes an I, and we're left with the square root of 11. So x minus 5 equals to plus or minus I times the square root of 11. I'm going to add 5 to both sides. X is equal to 5 plus or minus I square root of 11. If we want to separate our answers, here's one. X is equal to 5 plus I square root of 11. X is equal to 5 minus I square root of 11. On number 2, this is the equation that they give us. 1/3 times x minus 7 quantity squared minus 15 equals to 0. And we want to isolate the something squared. We want to isolate x minus 7 squared. We can add 15 to both sides. We get 1/3 times x minus 7 squared equals to 15 once we do that. Then this is not quite isolated. We need to take care of the 1/3. We can multiply both sides by 3 to keep our equation balanced. So 3 over 1 times 1/3. These 3's will divide out, and we're left with x minus 7 squared on the left and 45 on the right. Now we have something squared equals something. We can take the square root of both sides. The square root of x minus 7 squared is x minus 7 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 45. Now we have to solve for x, so let's add 7 to both sides. This is step 3, solve for x if necessary. So to do that, we'll add 7 to both sides. 7 plus or minus the square root of 45. Now we can make this answer a little more simplified, because underneath the square root of 45 is a perfect square. 9 is a factor of 45, which is a perfect square, so we can think of 45 as 9 times 5. We can take the square root of the 9, it will come out as a 3, and we're left with the square root of 5. So x equals to 7 plus or minus 3 square root of 5 is the most simplified answer. Again, if we want to write this as two separate answers, x is equal to 7 plus 3 square root of 5. X is equal to 7 minus 3 square root of 5. Number 3, we're given x squared minus 14 equals to 0. We want to isolate the squared term, which in this case is simply x squared. We add 14 to both sides. We get x squared is equal to 14. We're ready to take the square root of both sides, so we take the square root of x squared is simply x will equal to plus or minus the square root of 14. Our two answers are x is equal to the square root of 14 and x is equal to negative the square root of 14. The factors inside of a 14 are 1, 2, 7, and 14. None of those are perfect squares, and so that's as simplified as we can make that.